My name is Carrie and I'm here to help you learn how to plan and get over the fear of going on your first solo adventure. I took my first solo adventure to Europe when I was 35 and I haven't looked back. It was so much fun. So I'm here today to hopefully encourage you to go for it and try and learn. It's really not as scary as you might think. So the hardest part for me about traveling, and it still is this hard today, is where to go. There's so many awesome places in the world to travel, and trying to pick one is very difficult. So let's figure out where you want to go. That's step number one in this whole process. The first thing that you need to do is make a list. I know, you might not be a list person, but trust me, this is actually going to be a fun list to make. Write down everywhere you want to go. Doesn't matter if it's on the same continent or not. Write them all down. Next, we're gonna take that list and we're gonna go to like Google Maps and organize them, enter them in one by one so you have a geographical map of your locations that you want to travel. This will help us narrow down where we can go on our vacation. If you need help or inspiration on maybe where you want to go, maybe you're really not sure. You might just know maybe Rome or Venice or Paris. I suggest watching some YouTube videos. I did a whole bunch on Nepal, which was an amazing experience. Not sure I would suggest that for your first solo adventure, but there's also a lot of other good YouTubers out there. My favorite, and he's not really a YouTuber, I watched him on the local public television for years. His name is Rick Steves, and he has guidebooks, he's got tours, and he's got amazing videos or TV shows on different locations in Europe. He's mainly a Europe guy. So Rick Steves Europe is, I guess, his actual name. But yeah, he's the one who got me really like inspired, and I found some amazing places I would never have known to go to, such as Hallstatt, Austria. Very nice town. All right, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna start brainstorming any ideas. Now we're gonna take our list and we're gonna narrow it down. Do you have maybe a continent? Like, do you wanna go to Morocco? Do you wanna go to Egypt? Do you have multiple places in Europe you wanna go to? You need to choose one continent to begin with. So really think about it. Don't think too hard though, because we're gonna make this trip happen and we just gotta make decisions. And we're gonna be positive and knowing this is not gonna be our only solo vacation, okay? We're gonna focus mainly on Europe on these episodes, but you can use this idea of how to plan your vacations anywhere you go. So I just did this for Nepal. I've done it for many places I've traveled, okay? So don't think that this is only gonna work in Europe. Okay, so we have our little dots on our map and we're seeing if there's any type of natural route that we can take. North to south, west to east. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, so look for that on your map. Maybe it's pretty obvious that you have a whole bunch listed in Italy and you should probably focus your trip on Italy. Maybe you have a whole bunch. Europe's nice because it's kind of compact. One thing you might want to think about, first solo trip, you might not understand your style. Are you a slow traveler or are you a fast traveler? Or maybe somewhere in between. So think about it this way. If I said to you we're gonna go on a vacation and hang out on a beach all day long, every day, does that sound relaxing to you? Or does that sound like a nightmare? Okay, if you enjoy sitting on the beach, hey, that's great, you're a slow traveler. I suggest picking one city or country and just going there. If you're more of a I want to see everything type of person, and heck, I am too, then you can expand how far you go. Keep in mind though, I highly suggest that you stay at least 2 nights in each city. 3's better. So think about it this way. Your travel day somewhere is kind of a wasted day, unless it's maybe 2 hours away. But if you're going 6, 8 hour bus ride, train ride, you can't use that day to say, hey, I'm gonna be in Rome today and I'm gonna see something. Chances are you're gonna be tired, maybe get something to eat and go to bed. So first day, gone. Okay? Second day, you want to see stuff, you want to explore. And then you're going to sleep again. Do you get up and go and leave somewhere else? Or do you want to stay another day? So you just think about it, you know, do you want to have more than one day to see a city? Then you need more than 2 nights. 2 nights in a city equals 1 full day to explore. So if you want more than 1 day, do 3 nights. That's 2 days. So with that in mind, now we're gonna look at our list. Hopefully using Google Maps will help you narrow down where you wanna go. How many days do you wanna stay there? Just ideally. Write down your number next to each of them. I wanna spend 2 nights and, well, I wanna spend 1 day in Paris. How many nights is that gonna be? That's gonna equal 2 nights. So go through your list, write them down. Cross out if it's a different continent. So I'm going to cross out Egypt because that's really its trip in itself. I'm going to cross out Greece because it's not by any of the other countries that I want to travel to. Lisbon and Porto in Portugal is amazing, but it's really not close to any of my other trips. So that can be its own Portugal, or I can choose to go to the other countries my first trip. So see how it goes? All right. So add up all the days that you have decided you wanted to stay in each of these cities. Don't worry, this is not nailed in stone. We're just getting a rough draft of your solo adventure. Next, add them up. How many days do you actually have to go on this trip? Do you have enough to fill in? If not, then we're gonna have to cut some more. So let's think about it again. Can you do day trips? So if you're in Florence, you can do a day trip to Pisa. Or if you're in Rome, you could take a day trip to Pompeii. So you don't have to stay in each of those cities to see that location. I also suggest mixing up your itinerary with small towns and big cities. That way, especially on your first trip, you get a feel for all of it. And I do kind of like mixing up the countries because you get a taste of different culture and different food. And on your next one, you can narrow it down even more if you like, and say, oh, I want to spend more time in Germany this time. Because you'll have a little taste of it. I suggest you figure out how far your first location is to your last location. Because if you only have a week, you don't really want to be traveling a long way because it's going to waste a lot of your time. So if you have a week, pick 1 or 2 cities that are fairly close together. Maybe 4 hours tops, because you just never know what's gonna happen. Unless you're gonna fly, then don't worry about it. I had 3 weeks my first trip, and I hit 6 countries, and it actually was good. There was only one spot where I traveled a little too far, but that I could have easily adjusted on that if I knew better. But I would totally redo that trip in a heartbeat. Okay. Rome to Rio is an excellent option to figure out how far it will take you to get from point A to point B. Type in where you're starting and where you want to go, and it will give you options for buses, trains, planes, taxis, and just getting a rough idea. We're not going to really book through them. We're just going to understand, oh, it takes that long to get from Lisbon to Porto? Okay, now I know if I have a week, I can do that. Or I can explore more of Portugal or Porto and some other really cool towns that are outside of Porto. And there are amazing towns. Another really awesome idea, if you need help with maybe figuring out an itinerary, even just to get the first and the last point of your journey, I like to go to travel tour sites. G-Adventure is a really good one. And look up their itineraries, and they'll give you an actual map of their itinerary. So you can see, oh, well, they're starting here and they're going all the way here, and their trip is 2 weeks. So I could probably do the same, or they probably move a little bit quicker, but we can take out some in the middle. You don't have to go to all those places that the tour companies are going. You're just trying to get an idea. And excuse me. I also find really cool cities doing that because I've never heard of some of the places that they're going. And so I'll take that city like Hallstatt and I will type it into Google and see the pictures of the city, do more research and say, wow, I really want to go there, or not really for me. Rick Steves has a tour page, tour group. Definitely check that out. And another option, if you really don't want to go solo, or let's say you want to go to Egypt or India, I suggest going on a tour. There are big tour groups, little tour groups, solo. I think there's even some now with solos only. Definitely a good option. I took a GeoVenture tour in Morocco and it was amazing and everything was planned out. All we had to do was show up, and it was I highly suggest Morocco GeoVentures tour, by the way. I don't really suggest a European tour unless you're extremely nervous or anxious to go alone. Then go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. You're just more strict on where you can go and what you can do on a tour group. Try to get it maybe a smaller group too. GeoVentures limits their groups pretty small, and I believe there's some other really good companies. I know Rick Steves is really good, but he's really expensive. The reason I want to go on a European tour is simply just because I want the freedom to decide where I want to go. If I want to stay out one night, if I decide to stay longer in a city, I can do that because I have a freedom. And that's kind of one of the really awesome things about solo travel is you get your freedom back. You can go and do whatever you want because you're the boss. And if you make a mistake, nobody's gonna know and nobody's gonna care. It's true. Think about it. You went the wrong way and you ended up in the wrong city one day. You don't have to tell anyone. You can just say oops and you'll figure it out. It's another thing you're going to learn about solo traveling is how you can depend on yourself and you can actually solve problems. It really gets you out of that comfort zone of depending on people or not making decisions. You get to do it for yourself, and it's okay if you mess up because you don't have to tell anyone. Another thing to consider is the weather. What type of weather are you hoping to have? Do you want it hot? Do you want it rainy? So in Europe, on the north, it's going to be more rainier in the winter than it is in the south. So think Northwest United States, Seattle, Oregon. Or in the south, it's going to be more like Florida, California weather, where it's a lot hotter. So depending on what time you have your vacation scheduled, you might definitely want to consider that. If you have a 2-week trip and you don't really want to be too hot, you might want to start in the south or in the north and work your way down to the hot. Because the later, if you go in September, then it'll be hotter as you go, but not as cold when you start. When you're choosing the time that you go, don't forget to think about what's important to you. So is it important to have no rain? Is it important to have less people? So definitely look into, do you want to go when it's really touristy, when everything's going to be open a whole bunch of times? Or would you rather go maybe off season where the weather might not be as good, some of the museums might be closed or have limited hours, but there's going to be less people? So that's kind of a style preference. My first trip I went in, so long ago. I think it was in September, and I loved it. It was perfect weather. Hopefully you have an idea, just an idea, of where you want to go. I want you to really look at the map. What is the northernmost city on your map, or the western or eastern, in one direction, and then what's the opposite? So my first trip, I started in Paris and I ended in Venice. One time I started in Budapest and I ended in Rome. So that was going one direction, because when we book our flights, we're gonna book an open jaw flight. Now this is for the people who want to travel to multiple places. If you are the beach lover and you're gonna stay in one city, go ahead and just book your round trip ticket and get planning. If you're more crazy like I am and you want to go bounce around a little bit more, definitely open jaw flight is the way to go. Because if I did my first trip, Paris to Venice, round trip from Paris, I would have to travel all the way back up to Paris. And that's a long way. So open jaw ticket. If you're worried about budget, we will talk about budget and ways you can save money on this trip. Keep in mind though, there are a lot of good alternatives that can help you make this trip affordable, including hostels, which honestly, I'm over 40 folks, I'm almost 50. I love staying in hostels. So don't try to keep an open mind if you're low on budget. In fact, even if I had the money to stay in some fancy hotel, I prefer hostels. And I'll tell you why in another video. Also, explore Eastern Europe. Watch some Rick Steves, do some YouTube's research. Romania was amazing. It reminded me of going to Germany, but it was so much cheaper. So definitely keep an open mind. I just love traveling so much. I hope I inspired you to take this first step. Make your list. Don't worry about nailing down every location or how much time you have. Just go for it. Go for it. I want you to book your flights. Do you want to know how I booked my first flight? It is really funny and probably like you've never heard before. I was daydreaming at work one day, you know, looking on booking.com instead of working, and I was just kind of putting in flight information just to see how much it would cost, you know, and that was the Paris to Venice. And I picked those cities because it seemed like the air flights were cheaper. Who would have thought flying out of Venice was cheap? But it actually is one of the cheaper airports in Italy. No idea why. And it's awesome. You have to take a boat to get there. Anywho, so I'm at work one day, twiddling my thumbs, daydreaming. I wish I could go. I wish I had the guts to just book this trip. And I got to the end of it and it was like $1,200 for my open jaw ticket for 3 weeks. And at the end of the screen it said, oh, apply for the credit card, get $50 off. I don't suggest doing this, by the way. That's just what happened to me. I said, why not? So I applied for the credit card, really thinking I was not going to get this. And lo and behold, I was approved. And I'm like, but I'm only approved for $1,000 and my flight is $1,250. Well, $1,200 with the discount. So I read the fine print of the credit card and it said there's no limit for, or no penalty for going over my limit. So, you know, at that point I said, why not? I'm just gonna do it. If it doesn't go through, it won't go through. I wasn't even really paying attention to what I was doing because I really didn't think it was gonna happen. But I put in my dates for 3 weeks, which I hadn't got off or approved yet. And Venice to Paris to Venice, had no idea where I was gonna go in between those. I just knew one was in the north, one was in the south. I wanted to go to those two cities. Why the heck not? And I got it. You know, I went through the processing and it came up on the screen and it's like, congratulations, you booked your trip. I about died. I jumped up so fast, I knocked over my chair, jumped up and down like a little girl and started running around the office telling everyone, I'm going to Europe. It's the best feeling ever. Even though it was an accident, I really shouldn't have done it. It was amazing. And I think I did it like 8 months before I was going to go and I had plenty of time to plan it. And guess what? The planning was so much fun. To discover all these little towns in Europe that I've never even heard of before, it was great. And I'm gonna help you plan your trip. So if you're like, yeah, but this sounds so overwhelming, don't worry about it. It's actually really, really fun, okay? Do it, just enjoy your trip. Ugh, I'm so excited to talk to you about vacations and traveling, and it's just something that really excites me, and I want to share that with everyone, especially people over 40. It's amazing how many of you guys want to go but just can't, or are too scared or think they can't afford it. I'm here to tell you, you can do it all. Alright, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Please support the channel. Comment below if you have any questions. I can do some videos on it, but there's a lot more to come on planning this trip. If you buy your ticket, please comment below on where you're going. I would love to know how long, where, when. So buy those tickets. Ciao.